Hello and blessings to you. In this video, we'll cover chapter 29 in our first Hebrew primer, which will be the hitpael verb pattern. First, let's do some oral review. So here we have Vayomer Moshe el Bnei Yisrael lemor tizkaru et haTorah. Okay, and this is and he said, Moses, so and Moses said, we have a 3ms imperfect of amar, but it's a vav conversive, so flip that back to the perfect. So, and Moses said to the children of Israel, so here we have a word pair, and we'll pull the definiteness out of Israel in front of children, so the children of. We see this is plural because of this tsere yod. This is the typical masculine plural of a word pair. So Bnei Yisrael, Lemor. You can see that this comes from Amar, and it has a lamed out front, so we immediately will think this is an infinitive construct, right? So Lemor, so to say, but this in particular is our marker of dialogue in Hebrew speech. So they don't have punctuation, so we expect this to be a direct quote that follows. So that's why then we see these quotation marks here, which wouldn't actually be in the Hebrew text. So in English, we might then just translate it as a participle, something like saying. Tizkru, so you will remember. We see this is an imperfect plural, so you all will remember. Zakar, remember. You all will remember et haTorah, the Torah. So altogether we have, and Moses said to the children of Israel, saying, you all will remember the Torah. We might even be able to translate this, may you all remember the Torah. Okay, next line, we have hadavar ne'amar el bnei Yisrael v'haTorah nizkara, or really nizkara. Okay, so this gives us the word will be remembered to the children of Israel. So that might give us something like, or I'm sorry, not remembered, I was jumping ahead. The word will be said to the children of Israel, Amar. So we see that this is a nifal of Amar because of this noon out front. So that's how we know it's passive. The word will be said to the children of Israel. Vahatorah, and the Torah, nizkara, or yeah, nizkra. And this will be remembered, be remembered. So we also see that this is a nifal from zakar, so we have a passive sense of remember, so be remembered. So altogether we have the word will be said to the children of Israel, or actually, sorry, past tense, perfect sort of sense to it. The word was said to the children of Israel, and the Torah was remembered. So kind of compare the active voice and the passive voice between these two sentences. And Moses said to the children of Israel, saying, may you remember the Torah. Compared with, the word was said to the children of Israel, and the Torah was remembered. Okay, let's jump to the second one. Va ya'asuf hana'ar matayin parim va yishmor va yishmor otam neged hagavul. Okay, this is a vav conversive on a 3ms imperfect pa'al form of asaf, so ya'asuf. So the young man gathered. So, and the young man gathered matayim. So you might remember this part, and that tav kind of changed on us. Ma'ah would be 100. We have it, might at first glance look plural, right? But look a little closer, and instead we actually have a dual, ayim, instead of just im. So matayim, a dual form of 100, if you remember from our last chapter, we might say 200. So the young man gathered 200 parim, bulls, va yishmor, and he guarded, 3ms imperfect, shamar, and he guarded, otam, them. We have the direct object marker with a pronominal suffix. So instead of et, we get ot, and then is our 3mp pronominal suffix. So, and he guarded them neged hagavul, in front of the border. Okay. Va'ye'asfo matayim parim va'yishamru neged gavulaka. Okay, so this will give us, perhaps we kind of get the sense that this is going to be passive based off the pattern of this first one, but perhaps we don't know that at first. Okay, so maybe you don't recognize this because it doesn't have a nifal in it, and so if we just started to translate, we might see, okay, this is a verb conversive, imperfect, plural, so 3mp, so maybe they gathered is what we might translate this as. They gathered 200 bulls. Well, we don't know who the they is, and we don't think the bulls are gathering themselves. Might kind of give us some tip-offs that this is not what's going on. So if we slow down, we see that this actually has 3 distinct vowels, which we know is a tip-off to the nifal pattern in the imperfect, where the noon is kind of dropped out. And we also, well, we'll just leave that at that. So, ye asfo. Notice these 3 distinct full vowels. So, ye asfo. So this is, and they were gathered 200 bulls. So, and 200 bulls were gathered. Va'yishamru. Okay, so again, notice 3 distinct vowels, yi, sham, ru, okay, as opposed to yishmor. So that's just 2, yishmor, yisham, ru. So again, this is going to be nifal. So still, it's going to be third person because of this yod, plural because of the shurik at the end. So a 3mp nifal of shamru in the imperfect with the vav conversive. And that gives us, and they were guarded, neged gavulika, in front of your border. Okay, hopefully that's helpful. I know we didn't do homework for this chapter, so hopefully this will be a good refresher for you. Let's jump down to our vocab. So first we have halak, one we're pretty familiar with by this point, and the pa'al, or the kal stem, means walk or go. And the hitpael, it means to go back and forth, or walk around. And you can see, maybe even walk yourself around. Next we have halal. I think we've already learned this in the PL, means praise. In the hitpael, it would mean to praise yourself, praise oneself, or boast. Chazak in the pa'al is be strong. In the PL, it's to strengthen, harden, support, so kind of intensive of the kal. hitpael, or sorry, hitpael is strengthen or grasp. So we might think cause to be strong is to strengthen, or even to grasp is kind of a derived meaning. But then in the hitpael, which is this chapter, it's something like strengthen oneself. So this kind of gives you a clue, if you've seen these hitpaels so far, of the reflexive action of the hitpael. So we talked about this in the last video. But so the hitpael has this reflexive sense to it. So it's not active, it's not passive, instead it's reflexive. So strengthen oneself. You can see that chazak has hit almost all of our stems that we've learned, just missing the nifal here. So that's pretty convenient. Next we have chara. In the pa'al, it means to burn. This is often used with an expression about anger, so burning with anger, as we'll see at the end of this chapter, I think. Eved, in the pa'al, means work, serve, or even worship. You can see Eved, I'm sorry, avad is the verbal form of the noun Eved, which means slave or servant. What's particularly interesting to me is that the same word for serving or working is the same word for worshiping. So in the Exodus account, there's kind of this idea of being able to, there's this idea that it is not a question of being free for the Israelites. It's a question of choosing whom they will serve. So kind of the identifier that God is the one that has saved them is that they will serve or worship God on this mountain. So it's kind of interesting. Next we have palal in the hitpael means to pray. Notice that this one does not necessarily have that reflexive action, at least in English. I mean, it's possible that they conceptualize this in some sort of reflexive way, like an inward speech maybe to the deity. I'm not really sure about that, but in English it just kind of has that simple meaning, pray. Next we have Kadash in the PL. Would be to make something holy or to sanctify. In the Hifil, it cause to be holy or dedicate. And now in the Hitpael, it would mean make oneself holy or sanctify oneself, purify oneself. And lastly, we have af, which just means anger. Literally, it means nose, but I think it talks about it maybe at the end of the chapter. We'll get there. But notice it has both of these meanings. Literally, it's the body part of the nose, but because physiologically, when you're angry, for either some people, a lot of people, I'm not really sure, but it's a common thing for people's nose to flare out as an identifier of that anger. And so in Hebrew culture, they closely connected anger to the nose because of that. Okay. Let's look at idioms really fast. The command form of halal, so praise, is hallelu. So you might recognize this as hallelujah. It's combined with Yah, which is an abbreviation of the divine name, so kind of like a nickname. So I think we talked about this in one of the first class sections, or perhaps in one of the videos. But so names ending in Yah, like Ananiah, Micaiah, are signifying this kind of nickname of the divine name. So Yah, Yahweh. The other option is El, so you can kind of see that with the names Micaiah and Michael. So Michael, Micah, Michael. in English. The Ya is for Yahweh, the El is for Elohim, kind of abbreviations of those. So same sort of thing happens here with this command for hallelujah. So hallelujah literally means praise the Lord. Like, you all, praise the Lord, as a command. So, and here is what that is written out in Hebrew. So hallelujah. So pretty simple. This doesn't really look like an idiom, so I'm not sure why they put it into the idiom category. It is part of an idiom, but I think they talk about it at the end of the chapter. But right here, they're just telling you that they're only going to use it in the 3 MS forms, in the perfect and imperfect, because that's the form they appear most frequently. And the reason is because it is connected to nose. So chara, af, so literally maybe the nose burned, but then we might translate anger burned. Well, we'll get to that, I think, at the end of the chapter. The main portion of this chapter is about the hitpael stem, which, as we've identified, is reflexive. So we have active, passive, and reflective are kind of the voices of Hebrew. So active voice, passive voice, reflective voice. A reflexive verb is when the subject of the sentence does the action to himself or herself. So here's some examples of hallelujah. So we have in the active, maybe halal, he praised. In the passive, maybe, I don't know, something like nilal, he was praised. And then in the reflexive, it would be he praised himself. So maybe hit halal, he praised himself, which then we can extrapolate and say maybe he boasted about himself or something along those lines. Yeah, praise oneself, boast. So in Hebrew, obviously this is the hitpael that does this reflexive sense. Now, if you remember, the nifal also can have a reflexive sense to it, but this is the hitpael is always reflexive. Okay, well, here is a list of some verbs that we have learned that can be found in the hitpael. So there's walk, there's halak, so walk, go. Hit halak perhaps would be go back and forth, walk around, something like that. Halal means praise, or in the hitpael it could be praise oneself or boast. Chazak means be strong. In the hitpael it could be strengthen oneself. Kadash would be make something holy or sanctify, but in the hitpael it would be make oneself holy, sanctify oneself. And then, as we talked about above, some just have kind of a simple sense to them still. So for instance, hitpalel would still just be pray, not necessarily pray to oneself. It's not really the sense of it. But of course, it could perhaps have some sort of reflexive meaning to it, to ancient Israel, but in English it does not. So we can't really connect there. So, just one last note, not all verbs appear in the hitpael, obviously, and so they're not going to show verbs that don't appear in the hitpael. Okay. Hitpael is super easy to recognize because it always has the syllable prefix to it. Not always hit, but always has this sort of quality to it. So in the perfect, it will always be hit. Well, so here, perfect command in infinitive, it will always begin with hit. Participle will begin with mit. So mem is typical of the participle, if you remember. So mit is probably just this hey dropping out in, when the mem is in front of it. Similarly, in the imperfect, the signal letters, well, actually not similarly, but the tav shava here will still be identifiable. So in the imperfect, the signal letters are followed by this tav shava, and so it's still super easy to recognize. So we have et paleo, tit paleo, yit paleo, so pretty easy. Second root letter will have a dagesh in it unless it's one of the 5 gutturals. So a little bit similar to the PL in that sense, but it will not be in the gutturals. Okay, well, let's just move on to this chart. So in the perfect, we have hit palalti, okay, with the emphasis here on the lal syllable. So hit palalti, and this would mean I prayed. Hit palalta, you prayed. Hit palalt, you prayed. Hit palal, he prayed. Hit palal, or hit pala would be she prayed. Hit palalanu would be we prayed. Hit palaltim, you all prayed. Hit palaltin, you all prayed. Hit palalu, they prayed. Jumping up to the imperfect, we have et paleo, I will pray. Tit paleo, you will pray. Tit pali, she, or it could either be, or no, I'm sorry, that's this one. You prayed feminine. Yit paleo, he will pray. Tit paleo, she will pray. So again, as we typically have, our 2 ns and 3 fs imperfect forms are the same. Moving on down, we have nit paleo, so we will pray. Tit palu, you all will pray. Tit paleolna, you all feminine will pray. Yit palu, they will pray. And then again, same as this form, tit paleolna, they all will pray, feminine. Moving up to our participles, we have mit paleo, so this is praying. This is our masculine singular form. Mit palin is our masculine plural, still praying. Mit palelet is our feminine singular form. So again, praying, or maybe even praying one, or as an adjective, praying. Like a praying man would be maybe ish mit paleo. And then our feminine plural, mit palelot. So feminine plural form. All right, moving on to our commands. I'll draw your attention once again to see that these commands are the second person forms in the singular and the plural, but the signal letter has reverted back to the hit. Okay, and I think that's pretty typical of all of the stems we've learned so far. For instance, in the hifil, we still have a hey here instead of the signal letters. Because in the command, remember, the signal letters really do drop off. And then I guess it's just re-prefixed with this hit. Anyway, so we have hit paleo, so you pray. Hit palali, you pray. Hit palelu, you all pray. Hit palelna, you all, pray. And then finally, the infinitive, la hitpael, so to pray. This is the infinitive construct. And then hitpael is the infinitive of emphasis. Drawing your attention, this once more is the same form as our second masculine singular command form. So how will you know the difference? Context. These are very different forms of words, and sometimes it will make no sense to have a command there, and it will make all of the sense for it to be an infinitive of emphasis, especially if it's used with the same word in another form. So perhaps nitpalel, hitpalel, so we will really pray, would be what that would mean. Okay. Last thing, so we talked about this a little bit. Anger or angry in the Bible is expressed with the word af, nose, and it's talking about a flared nose being connected with being angry. So sometimes it literally means nose. So dam yatsa min ha'af, blood came forth from the nose. Sometimes though, and even more often, it's used to talk about anger. So gadol ha'af, great is the anger. We know that this is a noun sentence and not an adjective, right? Give you a second to wonder why. It's because this is definite and this is not. So it's a noun sentence. So gadol ha'af, great is the anger. If we had hagadol, ha'af, it could be something like great anger. But we don't. But that was the eraser. Okay, then we have af, achika, yashuv. So this is the anger of your brother. Okay, so pronominal suffix here on the end of brother makes this word definite. Word pair brings the definite to the front. So the anger of your brother, yashuv, it will return. You can also have pronominal suffixes on the word af, so yashuv, afka. So literally we might have your nose will return, but that is not the case, probably. That doesn't really make much sense. So it's probably your anger will return. And oftentimes, I think we alluded to this above, when talking about anger, it will be connected with the verb to burn. So again, if you think about anger as a physiological response, another kind of marker of that anger is maybe increased body temperature, maybe your face going red. In English, we might say you're flushed with anger. Something like that. But so here we have chara afi, so this is it burned my anger. So we see this pronominal suffix here. So my anger burned. Okay, here's some examples of this. Chara af David bachem. So this is the anger, or sorry, it burned the anger of David on them. So the anger of David burned on them. So that's what it is literally. We might say something like David was angry with you. Okay. Al yichar afcha ba'avedeka. So here is all. So we expect a command following this. So well, we'll translate it as a command. We expect the imperfect, I should say. So al yikar, so do not burn your anger on your servant, is literally what this might be. So do not burn your anger on your servant. Okay, probably better, do not be angry with your servant. Finally, we have vayichar afo ma'od. And it burned his anger exceedingly, or greatly, or very much, something like that. You can see that chara here is a clipped form, which we expect in a 3ms imperfect, right, with a vav conversive. So normally there should be a hey here, but that is missing in this instance. So vayichar afo ma'od, and it burned his anger exceedingly. So he was very angry. Speaking of which, I wanted to pull up, before we end this video, I wanted to pull up Jonah 4 and just kind of walk through this just a little bit, because this was a little bit shorter of a chapter, so hopefully you don't mind. There are several things in Jonah 4 that you might recognize, but I'll translate the first verse and then maybe point a couple out. So here we have Vayara el Yonah Ra'ah Gadolah Vayikar lo. Okay, so this is, and, well, okay, let's kind of maybe slow down just a little bit. Here we have Ra. Oh, I thought I could, I was expecting the pin. Sorry about that. So this is Ra, our word for bad or evil, but remember it could just be bad. But here it's been made into a verb, an imperfect vav conversive verb. So we might say something, so we can see this yod that it's a 3ms imperfect. So we might say something like it was bad or it was evil. That also works. And we kind of get some emphasis about this as well. So, and it was evil to Jonah, Ra'ah Hagadolah. So this is maybe again evil or bad, and then great. So, and it was evil to Jonah, the great evil, something along those lines. I think most translations say that Jonah was exceedingly displeased or something like that. But here you can see literally it would be something like, and it was bad to Jonah, the great evil, or really a great evil, rather. So, and a great evil was bad to Jonah, something like that. And obviously it's talking about God sparing Nineveh, if you remember the context of this, of Jonah chapter 4. So God spared Nineveh, Jonah's not happy about it. And so chapter 4 starts out, and it was, a great evil was bad to Jonah. That's how he interpreted God's saving of Nineveh, was as a great evil. Here's what I wanted to focus on though. Vayikar lo. So you can see this is, and he burned for it. So it doesn't specifically have the word off, nose, or anger, but it has that sense to it still, because burn is used so often with anger. So you can see, again, this is that clipped form we were talking about. So vayikar lo. Actually, this next word kind of fits in perfectly as well. Hitpael. So we already know this word. We see it's imperfect 3ms because of the yit without a plural ending. So imperfect turned perfect because of the vav conversive of palal, pray. So, and he prayed el Adonai, so to Adonai. Yomar, and he said, well, I don't know if we need to keep going. But so ana, this is like a particle of entreaty, I think is what it's called. So we might translate it like O, so O Adonai, O Lord, something like that, or maybe even I beseech you, Lord, or something like that. Here we have our, well, I don't know if I should keep going through all of this. I did want to, well, let me, because I started. Here is our question, our interrogative hey, that prefixed to lo, so no. So literally this is maybe, well, okay, so hello ze would be something like, is this not? So with a question, we kind of flip the word order around. So this might literally be, this is not, but now we might say, is this not? My word, as far as, well, I'm not going to keep going with that. I do want to bring up, here's verse 3 is where he's kind of being a little dramatic. Right here, we have this expression, Eric Afaim. Okay, so we might see nose. It's also a dual form. Body parts often take a dual form. Nose doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to us in a dual form, so I'm not quite sure why this is dual. But so Jonah's talking about how God is with much graciousness and mercy. Eric Afaim, so this is the word for nose. Eric means something like long. So here is kind of the opposite of what we might have with the expression of kara'af, which would be like burning with anger. Eric af would be literally long-nosed, but it's an expression that means slow to anger. I guess the idea would be that if your nose is longer, maybe it takes a little bit longer time for your nose to flare out or something along those lines. I'm not quite sure. But this is their expression, slow to anger, which we could even take one step further and say maybe patient. So in English, we might say patient is the opposite of quick to anger or burning with anger. So there we have that name again. Varav chesed, and abounding loving kindness. So pretty neat. Not technically a theophany because Jonah is saying it, but pretty neat description of God. And in other places, I think God says this, these phrases about God's self. So, I really like this third line, but I think we'll pause on that for now. So, blessings to you. We'll end the video here.